Hey everyone, how's it going today?
I am doing well. I'm really excited to have you here. I've been looking forward to this. I know that I've been working with PlanetScale a little bit in my free time, building some applications, but it's great to hear from the experts themselves, you, and understand how everything works together, because I'm sure there's a lot that I still need to learn.
Well, we are excited to show this off. I can't wait to go through the demo. I can't wait to talk about PlanetScale. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Maybe for those joining in who haven't heard about PlanetScale, you want to just give like a quick summary of what PlanetScale is?
Yeah, I would love to. So PlanetScale is a database, but more than a database, we aim to be one of the world's best serverless databases, one of the best databases for starting, one of the best databases for scaling. So at its core, it's kind of MySQL compatible. It actually uses MySQL database built on Vitess and other technologies that let you start, has a bunch of great features to scale, and can take you kind of as far as you need to go. It's built for serverless first. So we've seen a lot of the struggles that people face kind of using traditional databases with serverless, and we're aiming to overcome that, wrapped in a really nice product.
Nice. And Vitesse is pretty interesting to me because that's something that was built at YouTube, right? Or was used at YouTube?
Yeah, it was kind of built for the I say outrageous scale that YouTube has. You can imagine what it takes to run a website with that many views, with that many videos, and with that many users. And we are basically aiming to take all of that immense amount of work and time that went into building a database technology that scales so well, package it up so that you can use it kind of you can use it at any point, from the first query all the way to the millions of transactions per second. We want to provide that same level of scale, that same ability for everyone.
Nice. Yeah, I love that because I think it's really, there's a lot of parallels to what at Vercel we're doing with Next.js and trying to bring this technology and these innovations that companies have created, at the largest companies in the world, and bring that to the open source community and help uplift everyone from the hobby developer all the way up to the enterprise.
I couldn't agree more. We believe firmly that everyone deserves the same access to the same level of scale and the same level of technology. I myself and the people that I work with have been a part of so many companies that have just hit scaling problems some way kind of through their journey and had to spend so much time and so much effort not adding new features and not helping customers be successful, but instead, just kind of keep up with demand. And we envision a world where you just don't have to do that as much, where you can start with something and just know that it will scale with you as far as you can go.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, do you want to share your screen and we can start talking through deploying an app and looking at the workflow and learning a little bit more about PlanetScale?
Yes, I would love to do that. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So we will pick this. We good there? Let's see.
Yes, we are good
Awesome.
there. I can
So
see the dashboard.
that's great. This is my PlanetScale dashboard, and it's. I wish I had a couple more active databases. Unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of time to do side projects these days. But as you can see, I've created a few databases in here, including the ones that we'll be using. So this is kind of my database homepage. We can see we've got some metrics here for how many tables, how many reads and writes and things like that. And it's fresh because we're going to be taking you through, going from zero to deploy. So I have no tables right now. I have no writes right now. By the end of this, we'll kind of go back and we'll see some more. One thing I think and I really want to talk about here is this concept of branches. So I've worked, in software for quite some time, and I think the way the industry is right now is that we really value the ability to experiment and use things like the Git flow, where we have this main branch that has, what we've deployed to production, and then we've had all of these. We have this ability to kind of check that out, go create a new branch, and experiment. And for better or for worse, databases haven't really kept up. If you can envision like, okay, I can test things locally. How do I deploy my schema? How do I make sure that kind of my database goes along with the same development lifecycle that my code does? So one of the big things that we've tried to introduce is the concept of branching in databases as well. And we'll go through a little bit about how that works as part of this demo. But I just wanted to introduce that first and foremost. This is the cornerstone, I think, of how we're targeting making developing on databases easier, not just scaling databases easier.
Yeah, just to add my 2 cents there, as a primarily front end developer, when I first tried out PlanetScale, it felt like the same mental model that I had already built up for the Git workflow I was used to in the modern front-end development world, and just applied that to databases. So it kind of instantly clicked on how to use branches, which I think is really nice.
And that's exactly what we're going for. It's new, but at the same time, we want it to feel familiar. When we kind of came up with this and we started developing it, we almost thought, why haven't we thought of this before? I've spent so many hours of my life doing Git checkout, Git push, and stuff like that, and just never thought about being able to do that with my database as well.
Nice.
So if we're good to go ahead, I'm actually going to transition over to my command line in a second, and we're going to play around with this Vercel database. And I will walk you through some steps to kind of show how we are checking a new branch out, changing some schema and stuff like that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Awesome.
Sharing the individual windows makes it easier for those on the stream who want to see it in as high as quality and as large as they can. So we hear you at home.
Yes, I want to make sure that everyone has a good view into this. I have a big ultra wide monitor, so it tends to kind of cloud out the individuals if I share the whole screen. So I want to give that same view. I want to give that same view that we were looking at on the homepage, but with the command line. So we have this, and again, just like we talked about with the Git model and stuff like that. We also care really deeply about making sure that anything you can do on the UI, you can do with the command line as well. Useful for automating, useful for making sure that you don't have to switch back and forth and stuff like that. So, we have this great UI, but we also have this pretty cool, I think, command line. So I've created that Vercel database, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new branch off of the main branch. So I'm going PScale branch create, so the Vercel database, and I'm going to create my add tables branch, and that's actually going to go ahead and create a new branch. And we'll go over this later. Once we have some schema on there, we'll kind of show how the branching model works. Right now, this is going to be an empty database, so I'll go get PScale shell, and this actually will just launch us right into a MySQL terminal. So in that 30-second time period or so, it actually went ahead and created a whole new database and just kind of lets me have my playground now in this branch. Nothing I do in this branch will impact production. Nothing I do in this branch will touch kind of what I've deployed. It's mine to play around with.
Yeah, I think it's even worth pausing right there to really let the impact of that set in. Like, you're not only just creating a branch off of your main database, you actually have an entirely new playground to explore with. And I think this is really important because I know that personally, when I try to make changes to my database or like do a schema migration, I'm worried about breaking what's in production. So having that playground for you to try out and experiment with and make a schema change or put some data in there, it's really key.
So I've also connected to my main database, and we can see they have the same databases, but I'm going to go back, connect to my branch that I just created. We're going to go ahead and create a table, and I can show how it impacts one, but it doesn't impact the other. So
nice.
We'll go ahead and quit this. We'll go back to my add tables, and just for everyone who wants to follow along, I am basically following the tutorial that we have on the PlanetScale documentation site for how to use the Vercel application. So that has the commands to run on the command line. It has the tables to create and stuff like that, and kind of going through this interactively and pausing at times when it's useful. So we'll see. That doesn't look like, there we go. My internet is probably acting up a little bit. So we go ahead and copy and paste that create statement right there. And so now we'll see I've got one table in my database. If I go back, connect to main, it will not be there because they're different databases. And so there we go. If we were running production on this main branch, we can see they're just totally separate. Just like a new Git branch, you're not changing the code that you're running in main. You're not changing what's there. It's totally isolated. So yeah, the real power though, and the real fun about this, we can have two databases running. I mean, that's neat. The real fun starts when we talk about deploying schema. And this is, again, kind of a concept that we mapped over from the way we write software elsewhere. but we've introduced the concept of a deploy request for the database. So just like you can open a pull request in Git and propose changes, you can actually propose changes to the schema. PlanetScale has the entire workflow in there to review schema, merge schema, and change the production database without having to write your own migration tools and stuff like that. So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but I'm going to go ahead and open that deploy request with the schema that I just added so that we can get it into main, and we'll walk through that process as well.
Yeah, let's see that. That sounds awesome.
So I'm going to go pscale deploy request create, and then the database is Vercel, and then the branch that I'm copying my schema over is add tables. So this is going to request a deploy. It will create the first deploy request in this database, and I will go look at this right here. It's show. So we can see 13 seconds ago, I created the deploy request, and I can also look at the diff and see that PlanetScale has said the difference between that branch that we created and main is this table that you created right here. And we'll go over what this looks like in the UI in a moment, but this is all powered from the command line, all something that you can do, completely automated.
And the part that is appended on the diff here, is that part of Vitesse, or is that part of MySQL?
This is all just MySQL. This is kind of the default engine, character set, and stuff like that, and kind of almost you could say an implementation detail for going through how tables should be created.
Nice.
So I can also deploy this just as easily with the deploy request command. So we can go deploy Vercel1, and that will go ahead and deploy the tables from my branch over to main. So now if I go over to a shell in my main branch, I should be able to see that table now showing up in main. And sometimes my DNS has a bit of a problem here. Give that a sec. There we go. So now look at that. That user table is now in my main branch. And so this is a end-to-end code and database deploy pipeline. And we are working right now on making sure we can tie this into everything from CI, so that maybe using like a GitHub action or something like that, you can actually create a new branch, run your migrations, get a diff, and then kind of do that whole end-to-end flow as part of CI/CD. And also looking at tying it into other development workflows, so that if you have like staging deploys, for example, your staging deploy could automatically create a new branch so that you could test staging on exact copy of production.
Nice.
The other really interesting thing is that, like I talked about earlier, I can also create a new branch off of main again, and it will have the tables from main in my new branch. So it's kind of, we'll copy both ways, so that when you create that new branch, you don't have to run your migrations from scratch. You get the exact schema that you're running in production copied over.
Nice.
Which
is kind of like similar. It's like a similar concept of making sure, like when you're on a pull request, making sure that it's updated with the latest changes that are like in the whatever your production branch is, your main branch.
Exactly. It means that you don't have to worry about like having a whole migration system that runs migrations and things like that. All you have to do is just create the new branch, and you will get byte for byte the exact schema that you're running in production.
Nice.
Seem to be having trouble with that first connection. Anyway, my stupid internet. So there we go. Like this new show tables branch that I created has that same table. So create, I forget the syntax, but we can see it all gets copied over. And so it's just like Git, and it's just like the software development process.
Nice. So I guess the next question is, what does it look like in the UI, right?
Yeah, let's go hop over there and figure it out. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I will go over to sharing my Chrome. Boom, boom. And there's that. All right, so here we are back at the exact same window, and you can see it's actually auto. I didn't even refresh it. It knows now. I've got those 3 branches that I created, that main branch that is, kind of protected. The add tables branch that I created to add the schema into main, and then the show tables branch that I created to demonstrate, the kind of other side of that flow. So if I go in, I can actually see that same deploy request 3 minutes ago that I deployed. We can see it took a total of 8 seconds to add that schema. I know it's slow, it could be faster. And we can go over here, we can see the diff. So you can see this is that same thing that the command line outputted. And if you have a team that you're working with, we even have the ability to require approvals, just like a pull request. So you can make sure that somebody else on your team approves the change. You can drop some comments in, and fun stuff like that to kind of make sure that it's part of the software development process, just like shipping code.
Yeah, there was a question in here. I'll see if I can find it, about the ability to create tables from the UI. And I think it kind of ties into, let's say I make this new branch. Now I want to instead of doing the command line into the shell for adding a table, some kind of GUI where you could do that. Is that a future idea maybe?
I would absolutely love that. That is totally on our roadmap. Right now, we kind of have you drop to the MySQL shell or using the graphical MySQL tool of your choice. So there's like SQL Pro on Mac, I think, and things like that. It would be totally amazing to have. I think Prisma has actually a great version of this, like entity viewer and database viewer right in the browser. Absolutely something that we want to do. We have a very high standard of quality for these kinds of things, and so we want to make sure that we do it in kind of that PlanetScale way. But this is totally something, much like we don't want people to have to leave the command line and go to the UI to do things. We feel the same way about the UI, where if that's where you want to stay, we shouldn't make you have to go to the command line to do anything.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's totally on the roadmap.
Nice.
Shall we go ahead and go now deploy a Vercel application on top of this database?
Yeah, so maybe just to recap for maybe those who joined in later, we essentially, correct me if I'm wrong too, I'll see how well I followed. We created a brand new database, a brand new MySQL database built on Vitesse using PlanetScale. We created a brand new branch to add a new schema, and we then deployed those schema changes back into our main branch. So now we have a new database, we have a users table, and we're ready to actually put our front end on this and connect to it.
I couldn't have put it any better. I could not have put it any better. The one last thing I'll show is on this branch, you also can see all of your schema right here. So no editing, but if you're ever curious, and our production database for PlanetScale itself has tens and tens and tens of tables. It's really nice to be able to say, hey, what's the users table look like? And you can actually just link people right to that table definition, stays up to date with all those changes. And again, just kind of trying to bring the database into the 21st century.
Yeah, this is probably an obvious question, but PlanetScale is built with PlanetScale, right?
100%.
Yeah.
All of these buttons that I'm clicking are making API requests back to a backend that's pulling all this data right out of PlanetScale itself. I can even offer a little bit of a sneak peek. I won't do too much, but you can see here, this is the actual PlanetScale database. It's pretty fun. Nice. Also, so you can see we got a lot of connections and a lot of tables over in there. Anyway, let's go ahead and switch over. We've got this demo application right here, and I can kind of talk through it. And I think this is the fun part. Databases are neat. I love databases. We all love databases, but to me, the fun part is deploying, seeing the database used, in the browser, doing more than just creating tables for fun. Yeah, I'm happy to pause for any questions here as well if we want to take some from the audience or anything like that before we kind of take the next step.
Yeah, let's go ahead and answer a few questions before we jump into the next part of this. I will scroll up and go through here. There's a few questions around compatibility with future looking, maybe something like Hasura or something like Postgres. I see a few questions around that. I'm love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Hasura is definitely, I was actually just talking with the team earlier today. They have MySQL support, I believe, in early access or in beta right now.
Nice.
Once that's available, we absolutely are going to be ourselves testing to make sure that everything works and working on making sure that's a first-class experience. Just like PlanetScale makes it easy to get started with a database, Hasura also makes it super easy to create an API in front of that. we think that would be an amazing combo for basically having a full stack application in about an hour that you can start querying.
That would be incredible. And they have a pretty good UI for editing like tables live too. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Permission system. And, you know, I love GraphQL. I think GraphQL is an amazing way to just like get that velocity, that development velocity going. So being able to turn your schema into a GraphQL API, super powerful.
Yeah. And then potentially maybe in the future, Postgres.
We'll see. That's a harder one. The beauty and the magic of Vitesse is that it does so many amazing things on top of MySQL. It's possible. Anything is possible, but have it be able to do the same things on top of Postgres is quite a bit of work. So we're focused on MySQL right now, and we think MySQL is amazing. We understand that not everyone's going to be able to use it immediately, because of that, but we're kind of taking it one step at a time.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. From my perspective as the not expert on the back end, most of the things that I want to do with my applications work with Postgres or MySQL because I'm not using like any advanced functionality of either of them. So I feel like there's a lot of overlap there. Like if you know SQL in one, I mean, this again, I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong, but I feel like if you know SQL in one, you kind of know SQL in the other.
Yeah, and with things like, and we can talk about this later. I'm sure a lot of folks are wondering about Prisma support. I'm sure a lot of folks are talking, asking about kind of common ORMs. That's, I think, what we're targeting is being able to use things like Prisma on top of PlanetScale super easily, and that hopefully will mean, we have to worry a little bit less about specific databases and kind of have all the building blocks to just go forward and start building. That's where we want to get people. We want to get people building.
Absolutely. I'm just going to keep looking for some questions in here. Thanks to everybody who's joining. Really appreciate all the comments in here. Is there a way to kind of copy over maybe your prod data into one of those new branches you created?
This is another great thing that's on our roadmap right now. We're doing kind of schema only because we think that that's a great way to get started. And we'll be working, I think, over the next couple of months at both figuring out how to add this as a core product feature, but also maybe establishing some patterns around how you can use things like seed data and stuff like that to make it easy to quickly get data in. And kind of, I use the word hydrate, kind of hydrate your staging databases or hydrate your non-production branches. But right now it's schema only.
Okay, that makes sense. Here's a question. Can you tie deploy request into a CI pipeline? It would be great to auto-release a deploy request as part of a main repo merge.
I could not agree more. That would be great. And we believe right now, and we haven't kind of sat down and actually done the work, but with something like a GitHub action in the PScale CLI, it actually should be possible to do this today. For example, if you were using Rails, it should be possible to use an action to create a new branch, run db migrate kind of against that new branch in Rails, and then see if there's any schema diff. If there is, automatically create a deploy request. And then on merge, go ahead and merge that deploy request. So the PScale API and stuff like that does support all of that with the command line. What we'd like to be able to do is package that up into maybe a GitHub application or maybe just a series of actions that make this super straightforward and kind of let you plug your application in. We want to keep it generic enough that any application can do this, but specific enough that kind of the pattern is there.
Nice. Well, let's jump into the next part. And then for anyone who hasn't had their question answered yet, don't worry. We'll make sure we answer all questions, and we'll leave time at the end too, to make sure that any more questions you have that come up, we'll address them.
Awesome. I have to say, Lee, the Vercel team make this pretty easy. It almost feels like a cheat code. Really, all I have to do to get this started is just click this deploy button. And I'm almost done. It's almost too easy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deploy this example repository out to GitHub. So we'll make it a public repo. And then I am going to go ahead and create that. So that will go ahead. And then I am going to add my PlanetScale integration.
Oh, I wonder if because you're only sharing one Chrome window, it won't show you.
Oh, you can't see that.
Well, actually, I don't know. Click it. We'll find out.
Oh, no, it's already open. I'll go ahead and show that off. Let me let me go ahead and do that. Yeah, I think this is too much fun. I need a second monitor. That's what I need. So let's see, there we go. So this is the little pop-up here. So I'm going to install my Vercel database onto my Vercel example. I'm going to click connect. And what that's going to do is that's going to go ahead and, I wonder what's going to happen when that closes. Hey, everyone. Too easy.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and share again. So that's going to go ahead, and that integration is going to go put all of the credentials for my PlanetScale database in my Vercel project so that it just works. So we'll go ahead and go back to that project creation flow. Boom. So as we can see, again, the hard work's being done by Vercel. I mean, y'all almost make it too easy.
I'd love to give a big shout out to the Vercel team who's worked on this UI. It's been in the works for many years of iterating to make this deployment flow as seamless as possible, connecting with integrations and looking at all the individual steps and just trying to make it as easy as possible for people to deploy their code and hook it up to the services they use. So shout out to the team for doing great stuff here.
Yeah, we were when we were kind of writing these documentations and going through the steps, we were able to just actually remove a whole bunch of code or of documentation and go actually just click the deploy button, and it's pretty nice. So we're deployed now. I can go ahead and go to the dashboard of my Vercel project, but that's the flow. It's pretty awesome. Let me see if I can load the website. There we go. So there's our demo application.
You want to zoom in a little?
Oh, yes, I very much do.
There you go.
So I'm Nick at planetscale.com, and my password is just going to be password. Don't hack me. Not today. So I've got some demo users right here. And yeah, that didn't take super long. So we can refresh, and there we go. And this is our little example project.
And this data is actually persistent to your database. Like when you refresh the page, this is making the request. Yep. Okay. Nice. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, we can probably even see it in the that's going to be way too small, but we can see we're making the user's request right here.
Yep.
And we can I zoom into this? Oh, Chrome, your magic. We can even see I'm getting those users return right from the back end there.
Nice.
Passwords being sent over right there. So again, don't hack me. If anyone happens to navigate to this URL very quickly and type more data in, it's all yours. But yeah, that's the demo application. So I can actually hop back to the command line and we can go look at the data in the database. But again, I want to pause here. It was that easy. This demo application was able to pick up the credentials from my Vercel environment. This demo application deployed once we installed the Vercel app, and I was connected to a database.
And so this app is built with Next.js and what are you using for styling here?
That's a good question. I don't know.
You want to pull up the dev tool?
Yeah.
Take a look.
Ooh, let's do that. All right.
I think I checked this out and I think it was Tailwind. It was Tailwind. Nice.
It is. That makes sense. That's what we use on PlanetScale as well.
Nice. It's a great combo. Yeah. So one thing that I think is really interesting here, like the process is so simple, but it's really interesting to talk about behind the scenes, everything that happened. We essentially went from having a SQL database on PlanetScale. We deployed an entire Next.js application. We connected to PlanetScale. We authenticated with our account. We took the credentials to connect back to PlanetScale, added them as environment variables, made that secure connection, and then deployed the application, and immediately you're able to see it. And then just going even further, when you get that URL, it takes care of things like setting up HTTPS and SSL and give you this great experience out of the box. So it's easy to take for granted some of those things because now preview URLs are just more normal, which is great. But sometimes I step back and I'm like, wow, we came a long ways.
It's amazing, really. We were running a migration yesterday to update some types in one of our tables. And I was just looking at the metrics really fast, and I noticed that it was a multi-hundreds of gigabytes table with data. And it was the exact same process as I just did to add the users table that took 8 seconds. We didn't even notice, and except for the fact that I just happened to be looking at some metrics, and I wondered why the storage, had changed a little bit. And I mean, it didn't impact production. we our users didn't know, we didn't even know, because it just worked behind the scenes. And it's so great to take that step back and say, this is a principle that I think I hold, but good user interfaces, good developer tooling and stuff like that, to make it seem like it's as easy as hitting the easy button, there's so much work behind the scenes. And that's one of the advantages of combining PlanetScale and Vercel, is kind of both of our companies really believe that we're putting in the hard work so that people can focus on building what they want to build, and not focus on kind of decoding the all the different pieces that make a production system.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, that was awesome. Thank you for taking me through that. Why don't we hop back over to look at that data?
Yeah, that sounds great. So we can see real fast right here. We can see we're starting to get some of those writes in there. We've got our tables are coming in and stuff like that. If I go back to my home page, it looks a little bit more filled in and stuff like that. So, in production, obviously, you're writing a lot, but I'll go ahead and grab open my terminal real fast.
It auto-generates backups too. Is that what I'm seeing?
It does, yeah. I created this last night, but we do have right now, daily backups are taken automatically. We just do that for all databases as part of running the database. We believe that backups are important. And I could even go into my main database here now that we've got some data in it. And I can go ahead and just create another database right there, kind of as easy as that. And that'll go kick off another backup so that we can memorialize all of these excellent passwords that I've typed in my application.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So I'm going to go back to sharing my terminal real fast.
Okay.
Let's see. We'll go. Oh, I'm having a blast. This is fun.
This is fun.
Boom. So let's go ahead and clear this, and we will go ahead. So the integration will use the main database by default for connecting and writing data. That's the database where the schema can only be changed by deploy requests, and backups are taken automatically and things like that. You can read and write from non-production databases as well, but we kind of the model here, much like the Git flow, where you have one branch that you can kind of deploy from, and stuff like that, is kind of how we think about this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Prevent people from dropping tables in production.
Exactly. So we can see here. I see that I can see all your passwords, so it's a good thing no one typed in anything too bad. But you can see that data is filling right into PlanetScale. And if I try to do something like drop the table, this is fun. I'm going to type this in and just go for it. But we can see in the main database, we don't let people make changes to the schema like that, so that you have to go through the branch flow, similar to like a branch protection rule in GitHub. Nice. Because we believe, again, very strongly that you shouldn't be able to accidentally run database drop on the wrong terminal or something like that, and kind of cause a production incident. I've never done that. I've never done that in my entire life. But in theory, if one were to do that, they would feel very embarrassed. And so we want to prevent that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's just it's just fun. It's a good time.
Nice. Is there anything more with the demo you want to show, or should we start answering questions?
I think we can start answering questions. Again, I'll just say, kind of from a overall perspective here, the real thing that we're doing right now is we're trying to figure out how to make this experience the best experience possible. We want not only to make it easy for people to get started, we want to, like we just showed, right? We want to make that 0 to application, 0 to iteration as quick as possible.
Yep.
But and we'll be doing these these demos, and hopefully you'll let me back on your stream later. But we also want to show how it scales, and we'll show some of the high throughput. We'll show a whole host of features as PlanetScale evolves over the next couple of months to demonstrate that it's not just a fun toy, but it's something that you can build a real platform on top of.
I see a question that is actually related to that. First off, question from me: what is the default region? And then this question is, when will you support multi-regions eventually?
Great question. So the default region right now is the Northern Virginia area, kind of US East. And we are essentially imminently going to be adding additional regions. I'm going to show this off. It's going to be fun. I'll share my screen once more. But if we go over to this overview, so this is the UI right here, and I'll zoom in. Here we have the new database page. I'm kind of in staff mode right now. And we've got a couple more regions that we're already teeing up and kind of looking for more feedback from users to see where we want to be. So this is definitely something that we know we need, and definitely something that's coming quite soon. I won't say exactly when, but soon.
Nice. And maybe one thing to clarify too there, the default region that you deploy on Vercel applications for your functions is also US East, Northern Virginia. So that makes a lot of sense because you have your database co-located with your functions. It makes your response times lower latency.
Yep, I actually am based in the Seattle area. So for me, it's actually quite inconvenient to go all the way over to US East. It makes a lot of my queries from my laptop slower. So I have a vested interest in getting a PlanetScale database a little bit closer to me.
That's awesome. I'm in US Central, so I'm just right in the middle. You know, I lose either way.
Close to everything. Yeah. Close enough. But well, you know, I believe that there's a possibility we'll land there too. We want to be everywhere. We're not called PlanetScale because we want to be just in a few spots.
Yeah, the Mars database, when that lands, you'll be the first one to support it.
Yep. I'm ready for that. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to call it. Is it Mars? Does Mars have a north, south, east, and a west? Is it just Mars 1? Hopefully we'll figure that out sooner rather than later.
This is a good question. Can you use Prisma on top of PlanetScale? And maybe a larger question with that is how you handle connection pooling.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually gave a talk at Prisma Day, I believe it was a few weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago, showing off using PlanetScale and Prisma together. It's totally possible today. The user experience of it isn't quite where we want it to be. And that's, I think, primarily because what we call connection strings, or being able to just go and connect, not using the PlanetScale shell, but with the MySQL CLI or with a normal MySQL client, is a little difficult because we don't allow direct connection. So you have to kind of use PlanetScale CLI as a proxy. And so we are working right now on allowing just native MySQL connections where you'll go to the app, copy and paste, get just a MySQL connection string, and then plug it into Prisma. That will make it a whole lot easier to use Prisma, and that will make it kind of feel more like like the experience that we want to create. So that's also coming quite soon. And we hope that will kind of unlock the ability to use Prisma more generally.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that. I have enjoyed working with Prisma with Next.js. I know it's technically not an ORM, but it is an ORM. But I enjoy using it a lot.
I love writing SQL, but there's something to be said for having a way to model your data, a way to query your data, and stuff like that. It's a little easier. I like it as well.
Yeah, especially for people like me who are pretty average at SQL. Like my SQL skills are average at best, so I'm constantly Googling things.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. This question might be more for me. What integrates more flawlessly with Next, PlanetScale, or Firebase? I think from a Next.js standpoint, we try to give you the hooks to pull data from whatever source you want, whether that's PlanetScale, Firebase, your own on-prem database. But as far as the actual setup process, I think having the built-in integrations like the one that PlanetScale has created does make that initial setup experience a lot smoother, especially for people who are just getting into the world of front-end development and they don't understand as much for configuring all the different options. Like giving them a configuration out of the box that puts those best practices or those defaults and it gives it to you, right away, I think helps a lot. So,
and one thing I want to mention that you brought up earlier about Prisma was kind of handling a lot of connections.
Yeah.
And this is something that I really love to talk about with PlanetScale.
Mm-hmm.
The Vitesse system, it kind of acts as you could say like a load balancer for MySQL. And part of deploying systems at hyperscale means having a lot of servers that need to query the database. we've tested Vitess, we've tested individual PlanetScale databases to be able to handle thousands, tens of thousands of connections. And so, no PG bouncer, no serverless MySQL, no connection limits. That's one of those huge advantages that, again, we just don't think people should have to think about that. We don't want people to have to set up new infrastructure, use a specific MySQL client, or worry about anything like that. You can just, go right for it, roll over. One of the demos I wanted to do in my Prisma talk, and that I will do eventually, is kind of what we just did right here, but then scaling it out to like 10,000 instances of my app, and just kind of watching the connections come in, seeing what the graphs look like, and kind of demonstrating again. This is what we talk about when we say developing for serverless. We know this is a problem, and we have the technology to just make it not a problem anymore.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'll just share this. It's definitely not done, but I'm curious if this resonates with you at all. I've tried to outline this problem because enough people have asked me. So basically what you're saying is that this is a terrible drawing, so bear with me here, but you have all your users, and at a large enough scale, they make so many requests that you hit these max connection limits on databases. So currently you see people who put some sort of connection pooling in place around their server to kind of take all of those incoming requests, pool them into one, and then make less connections to the database. And this is something that I think we see people hit faster in serverless worlds because, each function is then opening up a connection to that database. So what's really interesting about that, and what poolers solve, is grouping all of those requests into one to the database. But specifically, specifically, I just quickly threw this in here. It's interesting because PlanetScale gives you that out of the box. You don't even have to think about it. It kind of just works. So you deploy your functions on Vercel, you can connect to PlanetScale, and you can essentially think of it as connectionless.
That's exactly it. So the ability for us to kind of just have basically a built-in connection pool that Vitess manages, it doesn't mean that there's really any super separate technology, but what it does mean is it's just something that we handle internally. And it does mean that you just connect to that same endpoint on PlanetScale, and we are able to do all of the work needed to make sure that we don't overload the MySQL or MySQLs that are kind of underneath the instance. And we do find sorry, go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. I was going to keep answering questions. Did you have something more to add on that, or should we?
Oh, no, I was just going to say you're totally right that this isn't a unique problem to serverless, in that, I've hit connection limits in Rails applications. I've hit connection limits in a lot of other applications. But the beauty, I think, of serverless and why it's so nice is that you do have that kind of spread. You have that ability to scale up, scale down. Just like you don't think about my deploy hosts with serverless, we don't want you to have to think about your connection pool either, and just kind of let Vercel, let PlanetScale handle it, and focus on building your application.
I love this. Dropping tables in production is worse than the worst horror movie.
That sinking feeling you get in your stomach where you're like, if only I could Command Z what I just did. I know that feeling all too well. One reason of many why we built PlanetScale.
I love that. There's a couple questions around just the scalability, not only the platform, but in pricing too. Maybe you could talk about, obviously it sounds to me like this scales to a really large scale because it was developed with YouTube in mind, but maybe you could talk about pricing as well too.
Yeah, great question. So in terms of scale, we don't have scale in our name because we don't believe it scales. The key here is that as we get into more complex Vitess features, and as we launch these features on top of PlanetScale, you're able to use Vitess we will eventually get to a point where you can do things like sharding and stuff like that. And these are super complicated Vitess concepts that we are going to kind of break down and make so easy that you can just keep scaling. We firmly believe that the way to scale a database beyond a certain point is to shard that database to work with your kind of schema and stuff like that, to be able to do that. And this is where, again, we have a huge advantage with Vitess. Vitess has sharding at scale that's been as part of the system for years and years and years, tested at scale. And we'll be rolling out more features to be able to support that more and more. We don't say limitless. There's limits. But to get to a point where you can scale far beyond a single MySQL or far beyond a single Postgres.
Maybe you could quickly explain what is database sharding.
Ooh, we're going to put some blog posts out about this pretty soon. We use the term a lot, and it's not something that's like,
Mhm.
oh, of course. But the idea is that, and this applies to a bunch of different concepts. If you look at your schema and you look at kind of the entities in that schema, so let's say you have users or companies or stores, if you can bundle up each of those stores or each of those users and find a way to segment the data, you can essentially scale from one MySQL to infinite MySQLs by putting different stores or different users on different MySQLs.
Hmm.
The thing is, you can do that in your application today by just creating a bunch of databases, creating a bunch of MySQLs, and choosing the right connection for that MySQL. But Vitess again just makes that so much easier. You essentially tell Vitess, here's how my data is segmented, and you connect to one place. You connect to just Vitess, and Vitess will go, oh, your query is for this store. Oh, your query is for this customer. I'm going to send you over to this MySQL. So to your application, it looks like it's querying one database, but then Vitess behind the scenes is able to know the store's over here, and you can even do cross shard replication and say, well,
Hmm.
I want to join this data in every one of my shards, and Vitess will replicate that little bit of data, for things like, little country codes or time zones or stuff like that. And again, this is not in the product today because we're actively working on building it. But the end state here is that we'll have this super complex system behind the scenes, and all the user will have to do is figure out, how is my data segmented? I'll tell PlanetScale about that, and then
Mhm.
we can keep scaling up.
And at the end of the day, doing all of that work to have a sharded database essentially results in better performance, lower latency for like globally distributed users, right?
Yeah, there's this great talk from, I think, KubeCon 2019 from some of our engineers about like a GDPR aware database. But a
Mm.
great example of the power of this with Vitess is you can put, a set of MySQLs in the United States, a set of MySQLs specifically in California, a set of MySQLs specifically in Europe, and you can actually teach Vitess that every customer maybe has a zip code or a country code or kind of a residency, and you can teach Vitess, put all the data for this user. If they're in Germany, put all of the data in this user because they're in California,
Yeah, that's
and
powerful.
you can essentially teach Vitess, and then you can deploy your applications in all of those places. And if a user in Germany, goes to your German app, all it has to do is pull that data right out of the European shard, and it can like basically serve it like it's local. But again, all you're doing is telling your application, connect to this PlanetScale database.
It's like you called up Jeff Bezos and you were like, hey, I'm going to buy this server in Germany. Like, I need this dedicated server box. Can you just take care of this for me and throw MySQL on there?
Yeah, it's we want to get to a place where, and again, this is very forward facing. We want to get to a place where we can kind of work with you and offer the flow where you can go and actually look and say, here's my schema, we'll make some recommendations, I want to experiment, and we can actually kind of help you get from unsharded mode to sharded mode. That's the true test of scale, and the sooner that we can help people do that, the sooner it's just going to be easier and easier to scale, and easier and easier to grow.
Speaking of AWS, there are a few questions in general about maybe why would I use PlanetScale? Why would I use something like Aurora or just in general like an RDS type system? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are advantages to both.
Mhm.
It's I love all databases. I guess I'll put it that way, right? There are advantages to using Aurora, advantages to using RDS, Google Cloud SQL, and things like that. With PlanetScale, we're in beta right now. We're still building a lot of things, but we are already, I think, offering a super generous free tier to get built on. And I forgot to talk about pricing. We can talk about that later. One of the things we care really deeply about is making sure that people can build real production applications without having to pay any money, and
Mm.
then grow with us, and hopefully eventually pay us money kind of as they exit that proof of concept phase. And so that's one advantage. We also, like we did in this demo, we want to make things really easy to get started. We want to make things so quick to get started that it's the first thing you grab from your toolbox when you're working on making a new application. And over time, and this is something I think I see in the comments, we also want to do things like integrate preview deployments and preview branches and kind of get this PlanetScale flow out there so that you're not only using what we think is one of the best cloud databases, but you're also integrating it into your development workflow. You're also integrating it into your deploy process. And we believe that PlanetScale already offers a lot of these features that if we can integrate them, we'll just make for a superior development experience across just a database. And that's the key, I think, is we're building an excellent database that scales, and we're also building an entire workflow that your team can use to scale the number of people working on the project. Reduce the number of errors, no more dropped databases in production. And over time, as you grow, you can shard that out. You can make it a global database and all of these kinds of things. Because we want to grow. We want to grow with you. We don't want this to be a toy. This is something that you'll be able to use for years and years and years as you scale.
Yeah. So we'll come back to pricing because I want to give my personal anecdote on this because I'm not biased in any way. Like I'm happy to talk about my experience, and specifically my experience with AWS is that pricing is so difficult. For context, I was working with RDS and I was deploying Postgres databases, and I was trying to delete all of my resources, and there was like one lingering resource that didn't get deleted, and I barely used it at all. Like I used it for like just a demo application, and I got an $80 bill, like just trying it out, trying to be a developer, like building tools. And I think that's something for me that's really exciting about companies who are embracing free tiers and understanding that developers want to try things out. I know that there's like AWS credits that you can get in some instances, but it shouldn't be that difficult, in my opinion, to try these things out.
I completely agree. So I'll just share my screen once more, and we'll go to the pricing page on the website. And one of my favorite things about the pricing page is that there's two modes here. With the developer plan right here, that is this cost. You get 3 databases, 10 gigabytes of storage per database, and 100 million rows read per month and 10 million rows written per month. So like, this really is something that you can use for real traffic in real databases. We're not offering, something so small that it's not going to be able to handle load. I firmly believe that you could build a real service or a real company starting here. And then as you get bigger, you just pay while you grow. The pricing is super transparent. We make all those metrics available right on the page. Even in the free tier, you'll be able to kind of gauge your capacity and things like that. And again, we just want to make it really, really easy and really transparent. No IAM permissions and things like that. Just, start the database, start querying, and worry about a lot of these problems kind of when you need to.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that model a lot. Generous free tiers make me happy as a, indie developer or somebody trying to build SaaS products.
Yep. And with the branching model, we even and this is an idea, but we're even hopeful that we can actually use PlanetScale as a local development environment sometimes. So imagine a world in which you didn't have to have a MySQL or a database running on your local laptop. You just checked out a branch, just like you check out a Git branch. Your application, your IDE automatically goes, okay, I know how to connect to this PlanetScale branch. And you can just all work right on PlanetScale. And so this means it's portable. I have a dream where, not that I write a lot of code these days, but I get to do it on an iPad. And this is the kind of thing where PlanetScale can make that possible because it just matches your workflow, but in the cloud.
100%. I love this question because I think both Nick and I are very aligned on where we'd like to see this go. How do we handle preview branch deployments in combination of the idea of database branches? This is something that Nick and I have talked about before, and I'm really excited to see grow, is the concept of I open up a Git branch and I get a preview URL, and it has that unique branch database as well too. So you're able to, let's say you're looking at that user's demo, you're able to go in there and edit the data specifically on that preview URL, make all your changes, merge it, and it's completely separate from the rest of your environments. I think like technically right now you could do this with a custom, CI/CD setup like a GitHub action, but we want to make this more accessible to everyone.
Couldn't agree more. This is where, again, just like we talk about, building this for serverless, this is where we're really matching concept to concept. And once we get this set up, we really think it'll be really fun to be able to push your code up, and then go see the database, get some seed data in it, and how these staging environments. The idea of a staging environment to me always says like womp womp, like you got to keep staging up. Staging is kind of always a little bit different than production and stuff like that. We want to go and we want to make staging fun. We want to make it a joy to use, and we think that with PlanetScale and Vercel, that's going to be possible, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Well, if there's any last questions, feel free to drop them right now. A couple fun ones here. Where can we get that PlanetScale swag?
Ooh, that's a good question. We're working on it. We're working on it. I would love to be able to get this in front of people. Oh, it's over here. I'm a big fan.
It's pretty nice.
We'll have more soon, hopefully. I like it.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and asking questions. We appreciate all the feedback and hopefully you enjoyed it. Nick, thank you for joining today and giving this amazing demo, walking me through the whole workflow. It's really exciting stuff.
I had a blast. Thanks so much for listening to me talk, everyone. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, if that is what it is where you are.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
See ya.